In January 1942, the Soviet command was preparing a large-scale Toropets-Kom offensive operation, which became an important stage in the struggle to liberate territories under German occupation. The main goal of this operation was to liberate the Tver, Pskov and northern Smolensk regions, which were considered strategically important for the further advance of Soviet troops. One of the main tasks of the command during this operation was to use partisan detachments to paralyze the movement of German troops and prevent the transfer of reinforcements to the breakthrough sites. The situation at the front was extremely tense. The Red Army sought to make maximum use of all available resources and opportunities to strike at the enemy, who had already established themselves in the occupied territories. Partisan detachments played a key role in planning the operation, carrying out important tasks to disorganize the enemy's rear. Their task was to sabotage communications, which could significantly complicate the movement of German units and disrupt supplies. Of particular importance was one of the largest partisan detachments in the Smolensk region, which found itself in a critical situation during the preparation of the operation. One of the key partisan detachments, which was to play an important role in the offensive operation, found itself surrounded by German punitive detachments. The situation was critical. The partisans could not conduct active combat operations and were in danger of being completely destroyed. Every minute counted, and the detachment commanders decided to request help from the command. In Moscow, they understood the importance of this detachment for the successful conduct of the operation, but direct military assistance was impossible due to the strategic situation at the front. The response radiogram from Moscow received by the partisans surprised many. "We cannot help with troops, we are sending an experienced scout to provide assistance." The words "experienced scout" sounded like a life-saving straw at that moment, although no one could imagine what exactly was meant by this. The partisans awaited the arrival of a new fighter with anxiety and hope. After all, not only their fate depended on this scout, but also the success of the entire operation in this section of the front. At the appointed time, the roar of the transport plane's engines appeared in the sky. The partisans watched what was happening with alarm, hoping to see help in the form of an experienced fighter who could change the course of events. When the parachute canopy opened, all eyes were glued to the scout slowly descending to the ground. The excitement grew. But imagine their surprise when a small boy appeared under the parachute. His landing was accompanied by a slight push, and the partisans, hurrying to the landing site, picked him up in their arms until he touched the ground. Confusion was visible on the people's faces. How could such a young boy be the same experienced scout who was supposed to help them? But as soon as the young fighter was put on his feet, he immediately recovered and reported loudly, with confidence in his voice, "Private of the 332nd Ivanovo Division has arrived at your disposal. Please report to the Army headquarters." Quote. Urezhdanok's story began several months before his surprising appearance surrounded by partisans. In July 1941, when Soviet units were retreating under the onslaught of the German army, Yura, then a 10-year-old boy, volunteered to be a guide for one of the retreating units. He knew the area like the back of his hand and managed to lead the fighters through difficult marshy areas, which helped them avoid meeting the enemy. However, he had nowhere to return to. His native Vitebsk was captured by the enemy, and his mother and sister were killed in the bombing. Left without a family and a home, Yura became the son of a regiment in the 332nd Ivanovo Division named after Mikhail Frunze. He was accepted as one of their own, but in the intelligence company where he was assigned, no one expected any military exploits from the boy. He was considered more of a talisman than a full-fledged fighter. However, the smart and restless Yura quickly showed what he was capable of. Thanks to his natural resourcefulness and excellent memory, he soon became a useful member of the team, offering practical advice and comments. They believed in the boy, and he justified this trust in spades. Yura quickly proved himself to be a real intelligence officer. He not only studied and absorbed knowledge, but also actively used it in practice. Almost from the first days of his presence at the front, he proved himself to be a skilled and quick-witted intelligence officer who could navigate the most difficult situations. Soon he began to carry out tasks that required not only courage, but also great intelligence. He began to practically live behind the front line, exploring roads, populated areas, carefully observing the movement of German troops and equipment. Yura studied everything down to the smallest detail in order to create an accurate picture of what was happening. His main task was to lead scouts through the front line and saboteurs to their intended targets. He knew every trench, every turn, every detail in several areas. His knowledge and experience became invaluable for the successful completion of the tasks assigned to him by the command. One of the most striking episodes in Yura's life was the rescue of a wounded saboteur. This operation required not only courage, but also enormous physical strength, especially for a 10-year-old child. When the saboteur was seriously wounded during the mission, Yura, without hesitation, took on the responsibility of evacuating him from the danger zone. He dragged an adult man on his back through impassable roads and mud, literally snatching him from the clutches of death. This feat did not go unnoticed. For saving the wounded man, Yura was awarded his first award, a medal for bravery. This distinction became recognition of his courage and determination, and also confirmed that Yura was not just a boy at the front, but a real fighter, capable of feats that even adults are not always capable of. His example inspired everyone around him and proved that even in the most difficult times, you can find the strength to perform heroic deeds. When it became clear that the partisan detachment needed urgent help and that someone needed to be sent on a dangerous mission, Yura volunteered without hesitation. His determination and self-confidence left no doubt that he could handle any task. To increase his chances, Yura even lied that he already had experience in parachute jumping, claiming that a sergeant he knew taught him how. It was already impossible to verify his words. The sergeant had died several weeks ago. And there was no time to think. Every day was counting down. As the plane took off, Yura admitted that he would be jumping with a parachute for the first time. However, this did not shake his determination and confidence. He understood how important this mission was and that the lives of many people depended on his success. Understanding that his chances of survival were slim, he nevertheless took on this difficult and dangerous task, without thinking about his own safety. Yura's infiltration into the village where the punitive headquarters was located became one of the riskiest moments of his career. The partisans managed to arrange for Yura to live in the same hut as the officer commanding the operation to destroy their detachment. The boy was introduced as the nephew of the owner from the neighboring district center, which allowed him to be in close proximity to the enemy and collect information. Yura managed to wait for the moment when the German officer left the hut for a few minutes, leaving the keys to the safe in the pocket of his overcoat. This short period of time was enough for the boy to steal valuable maps and plans of the operation from the safe. With such documents, the partisans were able to break out of the encirclement, avoiding ambushes and secrets that the Germans were preparing for them. This brave act of Yura played a key role in saving the detachment and ensuring the success of the operation. The Toropets-Kom offensive operation, in which Yura Zhdanko played such an important role, was a significant success. Thanks to the efforts of the rescued partisan detachment, it was possible to paralyze the movement of German troops along the Smolin roads, creating chaos in the enemy's rear and complicating its supply. Although not all the goals of the operation were achieved, its results had a significant impact on the overall strategic situation at the front. For this feat, Yura was given a special honor. At the request of the reconnaissance company, at the age of 11, he was solemnly accepted into the Komsomol. At that time, this was an extremely rare and significant event, since only the best were accepted into the Komsomol and, as a rule, from the age of 14. Thus, Yura became one of the youngest Komsomol members in the Soviet Union. His Komsomol card number 176464 is still kept in the Museum of the History of the Great Patriotic War in Minsk as a reminder of the heroic deeds of children during the war. Despite all the merits and awards, Yura was not going to stop there. His combat work continued, and he proved his loyalty and determination again and again. A year after his first great feat, Yura distinguished himself again, leading a rifle battalion out of encirclement. This time, he did not act alone, but his participation and knowledge of the area again played a decisive role. Marshal Kliment Voroshilov personally arrived at the front to award Yura the Order of the Red Banner, which became another recognition of his services to the motherland. This award became another confirmation that Yura was a true hero, who inspired everyone who served with him by his example. One of the most significant episodes in Yura's combat career was his participation in the destruction of a strategically important bridge. This operation required not only courage, but also the ability to think outside the box, act cunningly and stealthily. Yura readily accepted the challenge, becoming a key figure in this difficult mission. He spent an entire week pretending to be a friend of the Germans, bringing them moonshine and various food products. Yura skillfully gained their trust, telling them how he would dream of serving in the Wehrmacht, but in reality he was studying all the details of the bridge's security. He closely monitored the changing of the guard, observed the order of responses, studied the approaches to the bridge and the machine guns' dead zones. This information proved invaluable when the time came to act. Ultimately, thanks to Yura's efforts, the bridge was blown up, which was a serious blow to the German troops' supplies. But perhaps the most touching episode in Yura's life was the rescue of a little 3-year-old girl right under heavy German fire. During one of the battles, Yura noticed the little girl, who found herself in the very center of the battle. Without a second thought, he rushed to her, risking his own life. Under fire, overcoming fear and danger, Yura reached the girl and carried her out from under fire. This act once again showed how big his heart was and how great his desire to help those in need was. Yura later sent the rescued girl to an orphanage, taking her under his care and giving her his last name. This case became a vivid example of how even in the darkest times of war, you can remain humane and kind, without losing faith in the best. In 1944, during the battle near Drissa, Yura was seriously shell-shocked. This wound was his last in the war, and he was forced to leave the front. His combat path was over, but he forever remained in the memory of his comrades and everyone who learned of his exploits. After the war, Yura Zhdanko did not forget about his military past, but never bragged about it. He entered a technical school and was then drafted into the army, where he served honorably for 3 years, although as a frontline soldier he had the right to be exempt from service. The war years counted as 3 years of service in peacetime, but Yura believed that his duty to the motherland was not yet over. After the service, he worked as a welder, building gas and oil pipelines around the world. Yuri Ivanovich Zhdanko passed away in 1999, but his memory lives on to this day. His life and exploits became an example of courage, determination and dedication that the entire country can be proud of. Yura Zhdanko will forever remain in history as a boy who, at such a young age, did what many adults could not do. In parting, I would like to quote Yura himself, which best reflect his attitude to the war and the fulfillment of his duty. I played a real war, did what adults could not. And there were many situations when they could not do something, but I could. These words, full of pride and dignity, emphasize the greatness of his spirit and the greatness of his feat, which will forever remain in the history of our country.